I'll call to order this November 15th, 2021 Ellsworth City Council meeting. All councilors are present. Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council Miller.
I'd like to add an item to the agenda. Council Order 112108, action on executive session to discuss personnel matters in accordance with MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Section 405, Paragraph 6A. It'll be item 17.
That goes with it.
Okay, I'll read the first part. Executive session to discuss personnel matters in accordance with MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Section 405, Paragraph 6A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of adding that to the agenda? Unanimous. We'll add that. Council Blanchett.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to change the order towards the bottom of the agenda, just for the convenience and time saving of the wastewater superintendent, making item 16, let's call it the new number 14, and 14 and 15 will become 15 and 16.
There's a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. We'll make that change. All right. Rules of order, we follow Robert's Rules of Order and any other rules that are adopted during the organizational meeting. Item 4, adoption of minutes from the following meetings of the Ellsworth City Council, October 18th, 2021, regular council meeting, November 5th, 2021, special council meeting, November 8th, 2021, organizational meeting, November 8th, 2021, emergency council meeting.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Item 5, city manager's report. Manager Mosier.
Thank you, Chair Hamilton. Evening, Council. I have a couple of announcements to make. First off, I just want to remind folks that although our meeting here tonight did start at 7, moving forward, starting in December, the regular council meeting will be at 6 p.m. In addition to that, just want to let folks know that City Hall will be closed on November 24th and 25th for the Thanksgiving holiday. Many of you may have noticed already the large tree we have down in the parking lot, lower parking lot here at City Hall. That's going to be the Christmas tree for City Hall this year for the city of Ellsworth. And there's going to be a lighting ceremony for that tree on November 27th at 5 p.m. right here in the lower City Hall parking lot. Encourage folks and families to come out. And the theme this year is Victorian Christmas. So should be lots of fun. With that same theme, we've got our annual holiday parade scheduled for December 4th. And line up for floats and others who are going to participate in the parade will be at 10 o'clock starting on East Main Street right by Angelo's Pizza. And the start time for the actual parade to kick off is 11 a.m. The silent auction is still going on here at City Hall, so folks, please come in and browse through the different items that are there for the auction and place your bids and get that in as quickly as possible. Also, some people have probably seen, I know during the election, we had them out here for folks to take, but the Ellsworth Area Service Broadband Survey, we have hard copies here at the city for folks to come in and fill out that information. The information gathered is going to be instrumental as we move forward and take a look at what the broadband needs are in our city and where we have no service, little service, poor service, expensive service, all kinds of options. So it's critically important that people fill that out. And last but not least, as many of you can see, I have a beard. And so just put a plug in for the Ellsworth Police Department, which is partaking in its annual 5th year now, No Shave November. And in hopes of raising some funds for cancer patients. And we've had some very successful fundraisers in the past, and we hope to get some money together this year to give to some very worthy recipients. So that's all I have, sir.
Any questions? Council Kaplan?
What's the time frame that people have to fill out the broadband survey?
Well, that's a good question. We don't really have a end date on it. So we're just gonna keep going with it until we feel like we've got either they stop coming in, or we feel like we've got a sample that's gonna give us the data that we need.
Is it one member per household fill it out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, any other questions? All right, committee reports. I will start with the appointment of councilors to our committees and commissions. So for the Harbor Commission, Councilor Kaplan and Councilor O'Halloran. The Frenchman Bay Regional Shellfish, we are going to table that appointment. It will be on the agenda for next meeting, so we'll have a discussion then. For the Recreation, it will be Councilors Miller and myself. One of the things that just a reminder, Parks and Leisure, I believe we had rolled that into the Recreation Commission, so that's not a standing committee, it's part of the Recreation Commission. The Library Ad Hoc Committee that's meeting will be Councilors Kaplan and Councilor Hanson. The Finance Committee was appointed last time, which includes Councilor Blanchett, myself, and Councilor O'Halloran. Human Resources will be Councilor Hamilton, Hanson, and Blanchett. Local Roads will be Councilor Miller, Lyons, and Blanchett. The Human Services, we had disbanded that last year and rolled that into the budgeting process. That's where generally that committee would review requests, and we decided to do that as a large group. And we can talk about this and open it up in a second if there's a different direction. The Penobscot Down East Cable TV Consortium, myself. Solid Waste, Councilors Blanchett, Kaplan, and Hanson. Streetlights, Councilors Kaplan, Hanson, and Miller. And the EBDC Committee, Councilor O'Halloran. And certainly, if anybody has any questions about those committee assignments, just touch base with me and we'll certainly talk about it and make it work. Many of these committees, for the new members, they don't necessarily have regular meetings. Some of them are more sporadic, so it's not like you're going to be attending a committee every single night. So just to be aware of that they don't meet as regular.
Did you do the historic?
Historic. Were you on that? As a counselor?
It's Diane.
Okay. Historic.
Preservation.
Counselor Miller.
Historic preservation.
And I think if I missed any more, besides that one.
And the first one that you said that we're gonna table for right now, called the Frenchman Bay Regional Shellfish Commission. It's actually the Municipal Joint Board. And the reason I pointed out, in just a couple minutes, we're gonna be appointing someone to the other committee in the consent agenda.
Okay. All right. Other committees, any counselors attend any other committees? Councilor Blanchett.
Mr. Chairman, we talked a week ago at the organizational meeting, if anything came up in the Finance Committee, to bring them before the full board. And as luck would have it, something did come up this past Friday that the council should know about. We were presented with an idea by the Finance Department Director Josh McIntyre to change the way that we present, that the warrant is presented to us, to get away from paper and to do it electronically. We would still meet as a board on Friday mornings, but we would have the warrant ahead of time rather than see it for the first time on Friday morning. We would have it, I believe, Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, so we could review it electronically via email. And so we've asked him to come tonight and give us the same presentation, give the board the same presentation that we received Friday morning, to get everyone's take on it.
Good evening, councilors. Yeah, as Councilor Blanchett mentioned, the process in the past historically for the weekly warrant has been to print it all out by paper, attach a copy of the checks that would be dispersed to the physical invoices, put in a big pile, and then brought to the Finance Committee meeting to be reviewed on Friday morning by all the Finance Committee members. When the meeting is over and the signatures for the present members and the city manager are signed, they go back to the Finance Department. All of those invoices with this stapled copy of the check to it are paper filed into filing cabinets by all the vendors for that fiscal year. The process works through our ERP system, Munis, where right now the accounts payable clerk takes in all the invoices, scans them into a digital document management system, and then we print out the checks based on that. So there's already a process in place in the background. It's already digitized, and nothing would change as far as that goes. But we have, with the IT department, worked out a way to be able to show you just the digital versions of the checks and the invoices so that it could all be done electronically. And using Chromebooks, you could log on to the system beginning probably Thursday afternoon to review all of those. Any check that you have a question about, you can click on it, look at the invoice in detail, just as you would the physical copy. It's really just, it's not changing how we get the checks ready to go. It's just eliminating several steps involved, where primarily printing out a copy of the check, stapling it to an invoice. And also under the current process, if we receive an invoice digitally from a vendor, instead of just dragging that into the file system and keeping it electronically, we actually take the extra step to print it out and then attach a printed copy of the check to it as well for review. So there's a lot of extra, probably, in my opinion, unnecessary steps involved that takes up personnel time preparing the warrant. And it's just a way to simplify the process a great deal and save a lot of hours of preparation. And it really doesn't change anything in the way the actual invoices are paid.
One other component that I liked is it will also provide access for all counselors to be able to have this on our tablets, so that everybody will be able to review the information and have it. Now it's a little more cumbersome. If you wanted to see what was on the warrant, you'd have to come in, make an appointment. So what was discussed was the idea of having the Finance Committee get it set up, get familiarity in terms of the training, and then get all the other counselors set up to have that information as well. And it's all protected, the information. That was one of the questions we had around security, and Jason sent a long email, and I can assure you by that email that we have backup on backup on backup of data that's stored in multiple locations across the country. And in one location, it's stored where someone from the city can't even call the location to tell them to delete it. It's that protected with all the safeguards in terms of in transmission, the information can't be intercepted either. So all the information is already handled in that manner, and we would have limited access as counselors to the portion that we would need for review.
I think it's a great idea. I didn't know why it's not been done before. I thought that's the way I thought it should always be done.
And if it saves hours and hours and hours of personnel time that can be used elsewhere, I agree with Councilor Miller. I don't know why it wasn't done before.
Is everybody comfortable with this?
Yep.
Starting that process? And then we'll get it set up, and then we'll have everybody roll it out as soon as the Finance Committee has a chance to test it out, work out any of the bugs that might exist, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other committee meetings. Councilor Miller and I attended the Recreation Commission meeting, and primarily the focus, as you can imagine, is on the parade and getting that, all the details, along with the tree. That was an effort of the Recreation Commission, as well as the Chamber was involved in that as well, and the Chamber did an excellent job in terms of seeking donations, and that will be identified that evening when we do the tree lighting in terms of recognizing the group that donated the tree for us. The other part with the parade, you heard the time that it will be starting. Everyone's excited about bringing that back. So we encourage all businesses to get involved. Other groups in the community, just reach out. The team's there, but we're in the planning now, looking for more participants, and we'll accept all participants as they come forward. The other thing that the commission did talk about is that we've been trying to plan a winter carnival now for about 4 years, and apparently we either don't have snow or we have ice, and so at this point it's decided that we're probably not going to pursue trying to plan that, but there's some discussions about some other types of activities that we can do as a city, and looking to bring back some events, and might not be until next year, but there have been some discussions about, we used to block off Main Street for an event right around the tree lighting. There's discussions about doing those kinds of activities. So again, we encourage any citizen with ideas, recommendations, participation on that commission, trying to create a lot of different opportunities to bring some things back to the city. Anything
It's just that we're hoping a lot of things are going to be going on also around the tree lighting that evening. The Grand is having the Nutcracker that evening, and we're going to have pictures by the tree. So get all dressed up Victorian and come see the tree lighting.
Any other committees? All right. Item 7, citizens' comments. This is a portion of the agenda where citizens can make comments on any item. If it's on the agenda, you'll have a chance to speak at that time on that item, but if you would like to speak on any other issue, you're welcome to do so.
Good evening. My name is Cara Romano. I'm the director of Heart of Ellsworth. I'm here this evening to report on our October event, our Meet the Candidates event. Each of you should have a copy of our report that was handed to you earlier at the start of the meeting. So our Meet the Candidates event is an annual nonpartisan production that aims to provide an educational platform for the voting residents of Ellsworth. All candidates running for a seat on Ellsworth City Council are encouraged to participate. Events like this raise awareness of local issues and connect community members to participate in our local democracy. As you can read, our program goals are to connect residents to local issues that unify our community, encourage residents to participate in civic service, and to, of course, bring folks to downtown. This year, we had 2 program partners. One, the Ellsworth American, who was the moderator, as has been since 2018 when we started the program. And we also received a grant this year from the Maine Humanities Council. The program structure is thus, prior to the event, the general candidate questions are discussed with the moderator. This year it was Cindy Wood of the Ellsworth American. Final questions are chosen by the Ellsworth American representative, and 1 week ahead of time, we host a dress rehearsal, and all candidates are encouraged to come and to meet each other in person. Directly following that in-person meeting, all candidates receive the questions via email so that they're able to participate and to prepare for the event. That same week, we send out and widely publicize a Google form where folks from the community are able to submit questions that they want to ask of the folks who are running for candidates for seats on city council. Ahead of the event, the moderator picks the additional questions from the Google form that day. We shut it down at noontime, and then the moderator has time between noon and whenever our start time is, usually around 5:30, 6 o'clock. And that evening of the event as well, the attendees who come to the in-person event are encouraged to submit questions via index cards. So it's not only an opportunity to ask questions via a digital collection format, also in person for folks who don't have access to the internet. The moderator chooses the final questions from the audience submissions and then asks, after the ahead of time questions, asks those questions at the end of the event. This year, we had a welcome speech that was made by a Heart of Ellsworth representative, and we had opening remarks that were delivered to set a respectful tone for the evening, reminding candidates to listen with respect to all viewpoints of each of the candidates. The podium then was passed to the moderator. Introductions began, and each candidate was allotted the same amount of time, which was 2 minutes, to respond to each of the questions from the moderator. This year, we had 55 folks who attended our in-person aspect, which was held at the Grand Theater. And in 2020, we had 78 people, or none in 2020, because in 2020 we were shut down for lockdown. And we had 78 people in 2019 when it was held in the JB Atlantic Building, and 45 in 2018. So you can see the program has grown. This year, we were very fortunate. We had an astronomical amount of people that viewed the event on YouTube. We had 434 people. Last year, with the 2021, we only had 116 in the entire year. So that 434 people that viewed it on YouTube was within the first, or the 2 weeks after the event took place. 2019, we didn't record it as well as 2018. One thing that was different this year is that we had some technological difficulties right at the maybe the hour before we were to go live, and we were very, very, very fortunate that Nate and Jason came over to save the day from the City of Ellsworth's technological department. They were able to put the live broadcast up on YouTube for all of our attendees, and they also were able to push it to the cable access channel that the City of Ellsworth operates. Are there any questions about this event?
I have one question/comment. In terms of the growth of this is great, because it gives an opportunity for people to tune in and see candidates that maybe they wouldn't hear from. But I also think that the expansion of beyond just one individual being the moderator, and this is not a critique of one individual, I just think anytime you have one person making the decisions about questions is very limiting. So I would recommend that you look to try to create a panel of maybe 2 or 3 individuals representing a cross-section of the community to vet the questions, so that there's an opportunity for all voices to be accurately heard. I just think it would diversify it a bit and make for a more integrated event.
Excellent.
Is there any thought about doing it for school board also?
There is actually, and I appreciate that question. So you'll notice I wasn't going to announce this, but I'm happy to talk about it. It's public knowledge because I submitted it. So the program budget runs in and around $3,000 to $4,000 just to do what it is that we do. Now, that's everything from rental of the venue all the way to staff time that it takes to put on events such as this. So in order to be able to accurately represent all of the folks who are running for both city council and for school board, which this is assuming that there is anywhere from 2 to 4 people running for each of the positions, kind of have to build that in year to year, that would be 2 nights of programming in order to accurately have everyone have time to represent their viewpoints and for them to be fully asked questions that they need to be asked. So to that, it puts it up in the neighborhood of anywhere from $6,000 to sort of $8,000 that it would cost us to run the program, including the Ellsworth School Board or anyone who's running for school board. So that's not, it's something that we can certainly work towards. But again, it's as a nonprofit entity that has limited resources. We have to be very careful, so we would need to find, monetarily, we have to be careful. So we would definitely need to find partners and are open to having partners come in, whether it be in-kind contributions or actual monetary contributions that would help us put on the event to expand it to include school board.
Councilor Kaplan?
In 2019, when it was at JB Atlantic, I do believe the school board was there.
Yep, they were there. And to the Heart of Ellsworth standards, it was not done well, because people did not have adequate time to answer questions. Things were very shortened and condensed. And in our understanding and our sort of time of doing events and meet the candidates, whether it be that or it be community conversations, we felt that it was very rushed and people were not able to fully answer the questions. And people don't really want to be sitting for longer than 2 hours. So if we were to break it up over the course of 2 nights that same week, and we were to have one be focused on council, one be focused on the school board, then we feel that we would have enough time to adequately give everyone time to be able to speak.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
John Lenahan, good evening, councilors. I had the privilege of going to Augusta on Veterans Day and open up a wonderful ceremony down there, opening up with prayer and Pledge of Allegiance. It was followed by an all-day meeting and where we had a parade through the Veterans Center down there, waving to veterans that couldn't leave their houses or their place of residence right now. Then we went to the VFW hall down there. We had meetings all day with speeches and veterans. It was a very inspirational day for America and for our veterans. And I wasn't obviously here in Ellsworth that day, but I noticed on Facebook there were a lot of towns that had similar type of activities. Was there something similar like that here in Ellsworth? A Veterans Day parade? I was gone early in the morning and get back till late, so I wasn't aware of it. I would suggest that as one of the committees, is we put that forth as an excellent opportunity to show our appreciation for our veterans coming forward. We have a VFW hall here. I'd be willing to work with the head of the VFW here or anybody on that to make that happen. It was really a very emotional, inspirational day for me when we flew the flags and went through the VA in Augusta. So I just encourage our town to take a look at it going forward for the next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right.
Michelle?
Oh, sorry.
Would that fall under the Recreation Committee?
Yeah, we could take it there, start there, and then see what they think and if they want to. All right. Item 8, presentation of awards. Do not believe he is here, but Eric McLaughlin's being recognized for 15 years of service with the Ellsworth Public Works Department. And Katina House for 15 years with the Ellsworth City Clerk's Department. The City of Ellsworth proudly presents the Certificate of Service to Katina House in recognition for your 15 years of service as General Assistance Administrator to the City of Ellsworth. Your devotion to duty and loyalty to the community have contributed to the improvement of the City of Ellsworth. Presented this 15th day of November, 2021. Comment, I'll go back to the mic, that the work that you do is exceptional and you were recognized for that work. And I just want to remind the community what a great job you do in that role and for the community. So thank you for 15 years.
Thank you. Eric McLaughlin had asked that he's being recognized next month.
Okay, we'll do it again. Not on this agenda, but I do want to recognize Heidi Grindle. We all know that you are departing this week after a very long tenure with the city. And I certainly, in terms of being on the council for the short amount of time that I've been on here, but in the role of the chair, the knowledge that you have and your dedication to the community is really outstanding. I don't know if, reading all the things that I've seen, I think people do know and people recognize what you do for the city. But for those who don't, you are somebody who, you take your role very, very seriously. You make sure that everything is operating the way that it needs to. And if there's something that needs to be done, you make sure that it gets done. And that's something that with all the needs that the city has, whether it's somebody from the community coming in looking for a resource, to somebody on the council, you're always somebody who steps up. You find the information. You did this evening. I walk in and said, I need some stuff, and you immediately produced it. So you're certainly going to be missed by the city, by the community, and really appreciate everything you've done for the city of Ellsworth. Thank you.
I will miss the city very much.
And we're just going to pause, and
From my heart.
we'll make you uncomfortable for now. Yeah. Thank you, Heidi. All right. Unfinished business, consent agenda. Consent agenda, all items with an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless the council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Item 9, Council Order Number 112101, discussion and action of the request of the Branch Lake Water Steward to set the Branch Lake boat and aeroplane sticker fee at $0 for the calendar year 2022. Council Order Number 112102, request of the Recreation Commission to appoint Kathy Young as a member of the commission with a term to expire on June 30th, 2023. Item 11, Council Order Number 112103, appointment of Kathy Picard as Ellsworth representative on the Frenchman Bay Regional Shellfish Committee.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, before you move on to new business, can we go back on the presentation of awards? Did you want to mention the last two items?
Oh,
under
thank you.
that?
Totally missed those, thank you. Backing up, and I apologize, on December 1st at 11 o'clock at City Hall, Councilor Blanchette will be reading a proclamation to recognize World AIDS Day. So that's, again, will be on December 1st at 11 o'clock here at City Hall. So that proclamation will be read then. And also this evening, I certainly want to read the Small Business Day proclamation, which is November 27th, 2021. And again, referencing back to what we were talking about earlier, a lot of events are kind of tied together on that day, including the tree lighting. So it's a great opportunity for people to come to Ellsworth, visit our small businesses throughout the city, and then participate in our tree lighting at the end. The proclamation reads, whereas the city of Ellsworth, Maine celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. According to the United States Small Business Administration, there are currently 30.7 million small businesses in the United States, representing 99.7% of all businesses with paid employees in the United States. And they're responsible for 64.9% of net new jobs created from 2000 to 2019. And whereas small businesses employ 47.1% of the employees in the private sector in the United States, 88% of U.S. consumers feel a personal commitment to support small businesses in the wake of the pandemic, and 92% of small business owners have pivoted the way they do business to stay open during the pandemic. And whereas 97% of consumers who shopped on Small Business Saturday agree that shopping at small, independently owned businesses supports their commitment to making purchases that have a positive social economic, and environmental impact, and 97% of consumers who shopped on Small Business Saturday agree that small businesses are essential to their community by supplying jobs and generating tax revenue. And whereas 56% of shoppers reported they shopped online with a small business on Small Business Saturday in 2020, and more than 50% of consumers who reported shopping small endorsed a local business on social media or shopped at a local business because of a social media recommendations. And whereas the City of Ellsworth supports our local business that create jobs, boost our local economy, and are critical to the overall health of the United States, and whereas organizations across the country have endorsed this Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Ellsworth hereby proclaims Saturday, November 27th, 2021 as Small Business Saturday in Ellsworth, Maine. And be it further resolved that the City of Ellsworth urges the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. So again, that is officially November 27th. And so we certainly encourage everyone to get out and about in Ellsworth, visit our small businesses who are so important to this community. There are copies. I'll present a copy both to the Ellsworth Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. To the Heart of Ellsworth. Thank you very much. And thank you both for all you do to support our businesses in the community. All right. New business. Item 12, a public hearing and action on the following business licenses. And we do not have any this month. Item 13, Council Order Number 112104, request of the Public Works Director to award an engineering contract for the improvements at the Branch Lake Dam.
Mr. Chairman, move to table that item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any, all those,
Can I just ask a question? I guess I don't actually understand why we're tabling it or what it is, or,
it's being requested to be tabled because the Public Works Director is not available this evening to present.
yeah, so then next time they'll be able to present it. And then
Correct.
we'll be able to- Okay.
So we have a motion to table. All those in favor? Unanimous. We will table that item. All right. We moved. Item 16 is now 14, so Council Order Number 112107, request of the Wastewater Superintendent to approve the expenditure of funds to complete a major service on the Dewatering Centrifuge.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Mike Harris, wastewater superintendent. Welcome to the new councilors. Thank you for moving my agenda item up. And this is a request that was budgeted for during the capital improvement phase of our budget. We have a dewatering centrifuge at the plant that is beyond our skill to service. And so typically we have the manufacturer send a technician up here. We try to do it every 3 years to go over the unit top to bottom, replace any parts that need to be replaced, make sure everything's functioning as it should be, which there are a couple of things now that aren't, and give us a clean bill of health on that unit. We typically put somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 million gallons of biosolids through that unit every year. It generates a significant amount of revenue. And should that unit fail, then there would be a significant negative impact on our whole region as far as their ability to transport and dispose of their biosolids. And so we'd like to keep it working as well as possible.
Council Caplan.
I noticed that there's estimated travel costs. Is there anybody in state that can do this?
No.
Other questions? Councilor Heller.
How many times has this been done since the plant
was established?
So we've only done it one time, because when we first opened the plant, we had very little the number of hours that we were putting on the machine, the first few years didn't warrant it. And then as our septage and our hauled waste business kept accelerating and accelerating and accelerating, we started to run the machine every single day instead of at the beginning when we first opened, we would run it maybe once and then 2 times a week, then 3 times a week, and then 5 times a week. And now in the summertime, we're probably running it 7 days a week. So,
In your experience, have there been surprises in this type of maintenance?
yeah. Yep, so the first time that we did it, they pulled the scroll, which none of you know what that is, but they pulled the scroll out of the unit, and we had some significant wear issues within the scroll that we had to have repaired, that we would never have known about had we not had it serviced, because we don't typically dismantle this unit to that extent. It's beyond our capabilities. And most of the spare parts that were needed for this. So it's GEA Westphalia is the contract, is a vendor for the unit, and they're based in Germany. And so a lot of times the stuff that we need for this unit comes from Germany. So, yeah. So yeah, there has been surprises in the past. Which was another reason why I wanted to put this on a regular cycle, so that we would prevent that from happening in the future. Because the first time we did it was 3 years ago. So we're at 21, that'd have been 18, the plant opened in 12, so it was the 6th year of the unit being run.
And those surprises monetarily, what were they?
To have that taken to CNC machine shop and welded, I think was, I can't remember.
It was
specifically.
insignificant. It wasn't huge amounts of dollars.
Probably, I want to say off the top of my head, like maybe $1,800, something to that effect. But I mean, we do the preventive maintenance and whatnot on the centrifuge. We try and keep it in best shape as possible. But when you put the amount of solids that we put through it, and the solids that we put through it can contain a large amount of grit and inorganic materials that wear the interior surfaces of the centrifuge. That's where the surprise damage can come from.
Councilor Kaplan?
Is there an estimated downtime during this process, and then is there a backup if there's?
So the way it would work for us is once, assuming that the council does approve it, then I would go to the vendor. They would give me a date in the near future that they would be able to accomplish the service. We would then notify all of our customers what was going on. We would try to make as much room as possible in our storage tanks, so that even when the centrifuge is down, we would still be able to allow people to bring their stuff to us until we reach the capacity of the storage. And then if the unit wasn't up and running by then they would know that it was going to be, we would be down until the unit was back up and running. The last time that we had a major service, it was estimated to be 2 to 3 days. It ended up being a total of 5 days because of unexpected repair costs and, the time to fix it. We don't anticipate that this time. We're hoping it's a 2 to 3 day thing this time, because we're 3 years instead of 6 years out. But we notify all of our customers prior to that. Whatever that week is, we're going to tell them we will be down at some point during this week, and it could be for a number of days or it could be 1 day, but just be prepared that we'll do our best to accommodate you, but we need to make sure this machine is correct. So.
Councilor Lyons?
So if council said no to it, what happens?
Then we would do our best to maintain it, and hopefully nothing would happen.
Would it last the 6 years, or is it?
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, we didn't expect to find what we found when we took it apart the first time. which prompted me to start doing a better job at getting this on a cycle, because you're talking about a revenue source of somewhere around almost $500,000. So if we had a catastrophic failure, that's the only machine we have.
So this brings in, this 22,000's actually bringing in $500,000, so.
Close to, yeah, it was 400 and some thousand in revenue last year.
Okay, that makes it sound better.
So,
Just as a curiosity point, what is the cost of this machine?
I'd have to go back and look, but you're probably talking in the range of 200,000.
Okay.
I'd say 150 to 200,000.
Keep this thing working.
Yeah, it's an investment. I mean, it pays for itself fairly quickly,
Yeah.
so.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the expenditure of funds in the amount of $22,310 from the capital improvement account for GEA Westphalia to complete a major service on the dewatering centrifuge of the wastewater plant.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you very much.
Unanimous.
Have a good night.
So Mike, if you have to come to the meeting next month, it's at 6 o'clock start time?
Thanks for
Yeah.
taking me up to date on that.
Item 15, new 15. Council Order Number 112105, discussion and action regarding hazard pay for first responders. Manager Mosier.
So, Fire Chief and Deputy Chief Beers want to come up to the podium. They both presented memos, which you'll find in your packets, regarding this hazard, the concept of hazard duty pay. And I just want to kind of set the tone with, that I was part of the conversation at the county level for hazard duty pay. As many of you probably are aware, the county voted to authorize hazard duty pay from their ARPA funding in the amount of $3,750 to first responders, the police, the Hancock County deputies, and the jail staff, and $1,250 to all of the remaining staff of the county. At those meetings, I, along with some other local municipal leaders, implored the county to consider the precedent that they were setting with this ARPA funding, and asked that they consider, if they were going to provide ARPA funding for hazard duty pay for the county first responders, that they do it across the board to all of the county first responders. Out of those discussions, ultimately, the decision was made that they weren't going to do that specifically, but that they would entertain a matching. So if individual communities took it upon themselves to earmark or designate some of their ARPA funds for hazard duty pay for first responders, then the county would match that 2 to 1. To date, I know of, in conversations with the county, I know of at least 5 other communities within Hancock County outside of Ellsworth that have contacted the county about hazard duty pay for their first responders. So with that, I'll turn it over to the police and fire chief to review what information they provided you in their memos.
I guess I'll start. So, again, thanks for giving me the opportunity to come up here and just give you kind of an outline of, I know it was a challenge for everybody that worked, or has been working through these challenging times of the pandemic. And this is by no means what I'm outlining here to, this is just what the police department went through, what we did as a police department. So we're requesting $1,000 per officer. We have a total of 18 employees in the department that would qualify under the guidelines. And those guidelines basically are what the county set up So you'd have to be employed full-time status from March 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021, during the height of the pandemic, which is a 15-month period. So our guys that worked through that, just some of the things that we outlined. So they had a higher risk of exposure to contact to COVID. They were bringing that higher risk exposure home to their family. At the time when this started, most of them didn't have the proper PPE if they were exposed. So we had several officers that were possibly exposed, that had extended stays away from home. They were put up in Acadia Village until they were given a negative test result. All of our officers worked 40-plus hours a week during the pandemic. No time off was allowed for those officers during that time period. During that time period, we answered a total of 11,507 calls, so there was ample time that we were possibly exposed to the virus. And all our officers, again, were out working in the public, in the office. They weren't, we obviously, as a police department, we couldn't work from home. Nobody was allowed to work from home, and nobody did, and that included dispatches. So I did do some checking around. Hancock County Sheriff's Department, obviously, Chief Moser just spoke to you that. They're receiving $37.50 per officer. Penobscot County Sheriff's Department is paying $2,500 per officer for hazard duty pay. Orono Police Department gave their officers a 3% pay raise across the board initially during this time, which they left in place. Brewer Police Department gave their officers $1,000. And again, this is coming from the American Rescue Plan Act. It's not money that's coming from the city per se itself. It's money that was given to the city through the federal government to be spent however, I guess, you see fit. And we're just requesting that, again, $1,000 per officer. We have 18 employees. There would be, under our 18, there'd be 16 that would be eligible for the match just because of time that they were here during the pandemic.
Council, just to piggyback off what he said, we had 10 employees with the fire department that were here during that period of time. One thing I do want to bring to light is that prior to the start of the pandemic, Ellsworth Fire Department was not responding to EMS calls. That was not the nature of the business of the fire department. The fall of 2019 is when the fire department took its licensure to become a non-transporting EMS system. So the firefighters that were on duty when the pandemic started were just being introduced to EMS response. The pandemic was not part of their training. It was not part of any of our training. They adapted, again, essential workers, just like everybody else, except for we had to stay here and work. We couldn't go home. So they were repeatedly exposed. Those of us who were out in the street during this period of time, we had a 3-month window where there was a lot of unknowns, a lot of information coming in, not a whole lot of help for us on the backside. PPE was still an unknown, so these guys were out working in the street, not knowing exactly if they were protected or not. From a first responder level, me personally, even being out on the street, that increases an anxiety level and a stress level that goes above and beyond what they would do on a normal day. Now, these guys, you've met these guys, they respond to calls day in and day out. And all the calls that they go on that are unknowns, they can put them in a box and they can work with it. But without that information that they had, they were going out and doing the job you asked them to do and subjecting themselves to potential disease process we didn't know about. They continue to do that. And so I would piggyback off this and say, does that define the definition of hazard pay? I think it does. These guys went out there, worked every day for you guys, subjected themselves to an illness that was unknown, and have continued doing so since. Call volume, 2019, they ran 101 medical assists. Year to date today, for 2021, they've run 950 some odd calls, EMS related. So their call volume has drastically increased to do what you've asked them to do. So I would ask that you reward them for their dedication to the city, just as much as the police department. Our guys, they're truly the first responders here in the city, and, you know, I think this is a way of saying thank you for your hard work.
Councilor Caput.
Just a couple of questions. Now, I understand the number of people you're asking it for currently. Does that include any retired employees or people that no longer work for the city that did work during that time?
The list that I was given to me is just for the members that are currently with the fire department.
Okay.
Same with the police.
And if we do this for the people who are still currently here, and this is kind of a retroactive thank you, does that mean that we may be on the hook for people that maybe they've recently retired, or because they worked that time frame too?
That's a good question. None of these guys are asking for money, so, I mean, this is our way of giving back to them. They're not asking for it.
The police department wouldn't have anyone that qualified under that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we've had 3 retirees. It's what we've had since the pandemic, so.
And they weren't first-line employees anyway, they were.
No, they were not out in the street. They were,
They're
and 2 of
executive
those
level.
were administration that worked from home during the pandemic.
Yeah.
From the, so the appropriation of this, this is probably more a technical question around the contracts, union contracts. Can this all be done outside of that process, or does this have to go back through that process in any way?
No, we would do it as if it was a bonus, or in the case of the police department, and actually fire too, they both have established for their PT test, you know, to be paid outside of their normal pay scale.
Councilor Caput.
I have a question for
Sir?
city manager. How do you feel as a city manager rewarding only 2 departments and not everybody in the whole city?
Yeah. So I've encouraged other department heads, if they feel that they have a strong case towards hazard duty pay, to certainly bring that forward to the council. But specifically, when I think of hazard duty pay, I'm thinking of the employees that had no opportunity. Many of our employees, when City Hall was closed, were working from home or not working at all, because many people worked from home, received pay, but they couldn't really work at home. Many of our other departments, and I've discussed with a lot of department heads, altered their schedule, so people gained additional time off. So they had a week off, and then they worked a week, so as to limit their exposure. All of those people are not forward-facing as well. So when you have police and fire who are forced by the nature of what they do to go out and interact with people who are potentially infected, they didn't have the luxury of saying, no, I can't come. And all of our other departments, many work from home, many were here in City Hall, which the building was closed, so they had no interaction with the community, so they weren't putting themselves in an additional exposure risk. And really the only ones who did that throughout the entirety of the pandemic were the police and fire, which is why this was brought forward to me through my conversations with the county. It was brought forward to the council. But again, if other department heads feel they have, you know, an argument to be made, I would encourage them to do so, and actually have encouraged them to.
And, sorry, the county, did they spread their bonus over every employee or just first responders?
So they had 2 tiers. So the first tier was first responders, they're police, because they don't have fire. So they're police and their jail personnel. And then their second tier was for all of their administrative staff. So the people who didn't actually come out, because the courthouse was closed, much like we were initially, but those folks were also rewarded hazard duty pay at the county level. At this point, you know, what we're bringing forward tonight is for the first responders.
Councilor Hanson.
I had a question about and I am in favor of hazard pay for the first responders, but about the ARPA funds in general, when do you anticipate that money will actually come?
So we have our first portion,
Installment?
installment, yes, of 440, which we received back in September.
Okay.
And then they haven't said anything about the next installment, except it'll be next year.
Yeah, okay. And for all of that money, are we the ones who will decide where it all goes in this format?
Yes.
People will bring forth requests for how to spend it, and then we will say yay or nay.
Yeah, so we have time, so we don't have to spend, which is why we really haven't done a lot with the ARPA funding yet, because when we first got it, we talked to the council, and we have 3 years to commit it.
Committed 5 years to
5 to expend it. So, you know, we're still in the pandemic, right? I mean, we're not clear, so we don't know what the long-term needs are gonna be. We do know that we have some potential expenditures for infrastructure needs that qualify. Certainly hazard duty pay, or premium pay, as they put it, it qualifies. So, you know, and then there's a whole, you know, host of other options or opportunities that we can utilize those funds for going forward.
And I guess I would just sort of piggyback onto what Mr. Halloran was saying, which is, I guess I was thinking about people who work in the jail, and I was also thinking about teachers, who I think may have had the most miserable time of all of us. And I don't know if that's through this same.
So it wouldn't be through
format?
ours, but the teachers already received a significant amount of premium pay through not ARPA funding, but through funding that the school department had exclusively for COVID-related, and to the tune, well, the teachers didn't receive, but the school department in total received $6 million. And throughout the entirety course of last year, the teachers were receiving additional pay from those funds that were COVID, for COVID relief.
Councilor Kaplan.
Now, this is covering the initial part of the pandemic.
Correct. Pre-vaccine.
Right. Now, given that pre-vaccine even, the case count for this area was exceedingly low. But now the case count post-vaccine is exceedingly high, even with the breakthrough cases now accounting for 20 to 25%. I would argue that they should still be getting hazard pay, especially the city workers. Any city worker that's frontline face-to-face, whether vaccinated or not, should be getting some sort of hazard pay, because with breakthrough cases and with the unknowns, with the Delta variant and all, I would just say, you know, that the ARPA money should go towards all of the city employees, because it's still a hazard for just to be a frontline clerk taking your excise tax.
Councilor Heller.
I would just throw this idea out that, with all due respect to everybody, you know, if what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I believe that if there was going to be any bonuses given, it should be considered for all city employees, not just a few departments. And with all due respect to your departments, both your departments signed up for a risky job. Other city employees didn't, but they got a risky job out of this. So I'd be in favor, if anything was given, it goes citywide, not just a couple of departments.
I guess I would just comment a couple comments. One is that I think the unfortunate part is that the commissioners decided to made a decision about what they wanted to do with the funding, what they valued, and then pushed it off onto communities rather than dealing with it head on. If they felt that first responders should be compensated from county expenditures, they should have funded this in its entirety. And I think it just sets up a bad dynamic throughout communities. And it's not that I'm opposed to it. I just think that is an unfortunate outcome of this, because it's forcing communities to have this kind of discussion and to then try to debate who do we value. And so if we leave any employee out, it sends a message that we don't value their work. The reality is, throughout this entire pandemic, is that individuals in this community, whether they work for the city or not, have been going through a pandemic. The economy is tanking. People their disposable income, they're shrinking. Everybody in this country has been facing the same challenges. And here we are now with taxpayer money, trying to figure out who are we going to reward in local and county government, because there's a disconnect in terms of these kinds of discussions. And I certainly understand absolutely the first responders' unbelievable job throughout the pandemic. And I think a lot of that has gone by the wayside recently when you expand the first responders to all of our nurses, our direct service providers who work in our direct service providers throughout the state who work in facilities, and what has not happened for them. There's just a lot that we can look at as a community, at a state level, and we can do some retrospective of looking at that. So we're stuck now. We're in this position of we have this funding, and how are we going to use it? And I think it's legitimate to ask the question, what are those funds intended for? How do they benefit the entire community? And I think we have to ask that question as well in terms of where do we want those dollars directed? And it's a significant amount at the county level. It's less so as you get into the communities. But it makes a decision like this very difficult. And it's not about the value of first responders at all. It's a much larger discussion. So for me, I certainly would support it because I think we've been put into a position where we need to. I would be less inclined to support just an across-the-board all city employees because throughout the pandemic, there have been difference of response too in terms of working remotely, closing down. I mean, there have been a lot of things that have happened and transpired, and I think, Council Kaplan, your point is right on. I don't think we were in the height of the pandemic during that period of time. I think we're in the height of the pandemic now. We're seeing far more cases, far more hospitalizations. We didn't experience the same things. And yes, we have the vaccination, but the risk is there. And quite honestly, the risk is going to be with us for many, many years to come. We can get 100% of the population in Maine vaccinated, but 100% of the population across the world is not vaccinated. The pandemic will be here. There are breakthrough cases. What we need to do is to protect people, keep them safe. We need to make sure our first responders have the equipment that they need. And that would be a question I have. Do we have everything we need to protect you on a daily basis? Do we have the adequate PPE? Do we need to invest in other equipment? Those are the kinds of things I think we should be asking and directing some of this funding towards. Councilor Hanson.
I didn't catch whether you said Hancock County is going to match these funds or is not.
They are, 2 to 1,
Okay.
for first responders,
Yeah.
2 to 1, not 1 to 1?
2 to 1.
Councilor Miller.
And then to that point, I'm just confused about the 18 employees versus the 16 employees and the Hancock, what standards Hancock County is using and what standards we're using.
Yeah, so we had a couple of new employees that were hired after that time period that they established. So the county wouldn't match their.
So they don't qualify for the county funds,
Right.
but they started here in June, so they worked through the majority of the time period that we were looking at, so, which is why we included them on our list, but they wouldn't qualify for the county match.
So what's the total dollar amount for the city?
So it would be 1,000 per employee plus so the county would match with 2,000, so it'd be 3,000.
Yeah, but so the city would be 1,000, so it's 18 in the PD and 10
Yeah.
fire, so you're talking 28 total employees covered under this particular hazard pay.
So 28,000.
Right.
Councilor Blanchett.
I guess a question for the finance director. Josh, of that 28,000, does the city still have to pay social security taxes, retirement contributions, any other taxes that would be on a normal wage?
I'm not positive about that, but my assumption would be that we would have to withhold the normal payroll taxes out of that.
Payroll person's right here, she could probably know better. What do they take out of the PT? Because they don't do all of it for PT.
Right, so with other stipends or distributions for fitness tests and things like that, we only withhold taxes, we don't withhold retirement and those other benefits. It's just the federal, state, and FICA taxes that would get withheld. So yes, we would match the Social Security and Medicare on those dollar figures.
Okay, so that 28,000 would bump up to, what
It's
figure?
about just over 7% for FICA tax. So,
Another 2,000.
Councilor Hill.
Isn't there more than that, workers' comp, unemployment
we're
benefit?
self-pay workers' comp, so we only get billed when we have an injury.
And does this affect any of the union contracts as far as benefits?
No, as the city manager said, they have clauses in their contracts already that allow for detail pays and special duty pays. This would just fall under those also.
Okay.
Councilor Lyons?
I'm just getting a headache from listening to this, but, right from the day one, I don't understand why the government spent trillions paying Americans to stay home, paying them money extra that they really did nothing for, and then they give money away that I'm paying in every week out of my check, whether it's through the city or through the federal government that tosses it down. And we're going trillions of dollars in debt, and then we're gonna sit here and talk about giving more money away. I just don't see it. I mean, people get wages every week, just like I do. If you wanna talk about hazardous jobs, my son worked at Walmart the whole time, pushing every cart that every person in this county had COVID touched, you know. I mean, you can give it to every person that worked at Dunkin' Donuts, every restaurant, every business in Ellsworth that was open, Irving, Mobile, just go up there and, or when they give you the money, take it up there and donate it to one of them that worked just as hard.
And the fact of the matter is many of those places did give their employees
And many of them
additional
didn't.
funds. So,
Councilor Hanson?
So it sounds, I'm just trying to make sure I understand. It sounds like Hancock County kind of made this decision and offered this matching fund, and that's really why we're having this conversation right now, right? About using the money in this way, because it allows us to capitalize on the
Well,
matching that they're gonna
so-
give for the,
yeah, so the county created this matching system.
Yep.
But the concept of hazard pay was something that was brought forward by the department heads themselves.
yep.
So, yeah, and that, to that point, I mean, with everything I've said, I support this because of the way that it's been set up. And otherwise, because the county is going to provide that funding, that's how they've allocated it, that's what they're going to do. And it's directed specifically for that purpose, period. We can't use it for any other purpose except for that. And I do think that the first responders certainly had a different type of position. So from that perspective, I support that part. The concern I have with, when we start talking about hazard pay is the ongoing nature of what does it mean? How do you define that? If you're talking about COVID, when does the period really start and when does it end? This is an arbitrary time frame that was created by the commissioners. Fact of the matter is, just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean that there isn't still risk, and I just think there's going to be ongoing risk, and so I don't agree on the basis that this is hazard pay for that specific period of time. And I want to go on the record of saying that this is recognition, hazard pay for what the pandemic has done, but it's covering the whole period of time from that period now all the way through, because the last thing is then we get in a debate of when does this end? and the justification of coming back and asking for more hazard pay. And there have been a lot of businesses that would love to give hazard pay that can't. So I just think that for me, this is not a point in time artificial between this date and this date. It's to recognize the service that's being provided and putting yourselves out there, but it's not limited to that time period from my perspective. And that clearly has, for me, is something that has to go on the record, because that should not be coming back to us in the future as an issue. Further discussion?
Is this something we would have to make a motion for, or this is just discussion?
Oh, it's a motion if somebody wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. I don't know how to say the motion right. I will make a motion to go forward with the request for hazard pay for the firefighters. Just read it there. I would make a motion for the approval of money from the ARPA funds for the police department and the fire department as requested.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a friendly amendment to that motion by stating that this is not for a, as you call it, a distinct period, with a beginning date and an ending date. That these funds are in appreciation of the work that has been done through the pandemic by the first responders of Ellsworth.
So-
Yeah, so, and I say, yes,
Yeah.
sounds
If you
friendly
want
to
to say,
me.
if you're okay with that, then it gets added. Are you okay with it as a second? So the amended motion, Council Kaplan.
As long as it still uses the word hazard pay, because otherwise it doesn't qualify for the ARPA, am I correct?
Premium pay is the ARPA
Premium.
wording that they use.
Premium.
That works?
Okay with that?
Okay.
Okay.
We'll get it sooner or later.
So I'm going to pause to see. I mean, we couldn't make this easy on your last day. Oh. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? I will just, again, with everything said, I just want to stress that our first responders have done an incredible job, do an incredible job every single day. This is, all my comments are not directed at individuals and the work that you do. It's more of this larger system of how it's come together and played out. And I just want to make sure that that's very clear. Council Lyons.
I just want to say, if this passes, I think it leaves 9,000 taxpayers out of everything. That they are just as important as the people that work for the city, that they pay their wages.
In response to that, Counselor, keep in mind that we have 3 years, was it 3 or 4 years, to plan it,
Three
and 5
allocated,
years.
5 to spend.
Right, and 5 to spend. So by no means is the dispersing of, in the neighborhood of $30,000 this evening, the end of the $860,000, $870,000 ARPA funds that Ellsworth is getting.
I'll buy a big bottle of Tylenol, because I'm going to get a lot of headaches.
Well, one of the things I would, just on that point, is I would encourage the community to also have, let your voices be heard in terms of how you think the city should utilize that funding. That funding is coming in. We're going to have it. We have some of it now, and we're going to receive the other half at another point in time. So we want to hear from the community. We want to hear suggestions and ideas as we vet this, and And to your point, Councilor Lyons, it's an opportunity to be responsive to the needs of the rest of the community as well. Other comments? Councilor O'Halloran?
I'd just like to go on the record and say that I'm not against rewarding employees. I just think it should be all departments, all city employees, not just a couple of departments. Again, these gentlemen do a wonderful job, but they signed up for a risky job. And all of us got a risky job out of this pandemic. And I really think it's unfair to reward two departments and not all city employees.
Councilor Kaplan?
Are all city employees eligible? Like each department?
So they could be eligible for ARPA funding from the city. The county matching funds is only first responders. And in the department head meeting, I spoke about this very issue, and again, I encouraged all department heads who felt they had a solid argument to bring that forward, and we would put it on future agendas, and the council could weigh the pros and cons, or the discussion, and make a decision going forward on other departments as well. These are the only two departments that, and this is, again, to Councilor Hamilton's point, these two departments are reacting to what happened at the county level, which is why this proposal has come forward, is a reactionary measure to the county, because the county said, in essence, we're willing to provide hazard duty pay to your first responders, but you have to have skin in the game. You have to commit money first. So that's why this request has come forward at this time, so that we can take advantage, those employees can take advantage of the county funds in addition to the city funds.
Councilor O'Halloran?
I think that's wonderful that these two departments qualify for matching funds or 2-to-1 funds. I think that's wonderful. I think that signifies their commitment, and I think the county recognizing that is wonderful. But I still say there's no harm in rewarding all employees of the city, even if only these two departments are being rewarded with matching funds.
And we can certainly, I can certainly consult with department heads, and we can bring back a proposal for other departments. I'm sure after the meeting, I'm sure I'm gonna get that response from many of them, so, but I think it's, I think it's a bigger picture. We have to look at the totality of of everything involved, what transpired in the early stages of the pandemic for many city employees, what preventative things were put in place that, that afforded them protection and those type of things. So I think, but we have to take a look at it, and we certainly can.
And for me, that would be important in terms of, I have no problem listening to that, but without a presentation, hearing what took place from each department, it's hard to just do it across the board kind of thing. I'll go back to my comment before. If this having to have put some money on the table to support that, if the county commissioners feel that this is important, that 2-to-1 match should be, send us the 2 and let us decide whether we want to contribute anything beyond that. There shouldn't be any kind of strings to that if they feel that this is important. We should be receiving that, and we should be passing that on through to the first responders, period, and then we can have a separate discussion. So I just find that that baffles me in terms of what their thought process is. They're holding the money hostage based on their arbitrary decisions around trying to force communities to make a decision. If they value this, they should have distributed the funds, period. No strings attached.
I agree.
So free money always comes with strings.
Yes. All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Council Blanchard.
Just to get it out there, in case anyone is wondering, the money that we got, the 850, 60, 70,000, pales in comparison to what Hancock County got. That was $10 million.
10.6.
So,
Any further comments? All right, we have a motion to accept this plan. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 16, Council Order Number 112106, discussion and action on creating a new accounting position within the Finance Department.
So going back to the pandemic, I guess, we've had a shortage, I believe, in my opinion, in the finance department as far as personnel goes. The previous deputy city manager, who had a significant role in the finance department, Tammy Moat, left in spring of last year, kept only 2 people directly in the finance office, not counting the tax collector and clerks. When I came in on June 1st this year, I think there was a significant backlog with a lot of things that we were working on. It's been kind of a hectic experience trying to get caught up. Our previous accounts payable clerk resigned right around Labor Day and left. During that interim between when she left and when we brought somebody new on in early October, the deputy finance director, Jen Merchant, had to perform the accounts payable role. That role in and of itself is pretty much a full-time position, just taking care of the bills. What I've looked at here is to, and discuss with Manager Mosier, is to add one more person in that office to provide some redundancy for the roles, so that in the future, should somebody depart, there would be less interruption in the operations and continuity of the department. If deputy finance director is busy scanning invoices all day long and getting the warrant ready, she can't do the general ledger and accounting roles that we need her to be doing. Besides the fact that there's a great deal of projects that we have, one-off projects that come along, plus a significant backlog of projects right now that we have to get caught up on. I think that adding another person kind of above the accounts payable position that's currently there, with more of an accounting focus as well. So the way we envision it was to have the new position would do a lot of the same responsibilities as the current accounts payable clerk, so that if that person was on vacation or should depart, there would be another person there very well acquainted with those roles, but also to do more typical accounting roles, overlapping to some degree up the ladder to the deputy finance manager position, to alleviate some of the pressure on there as well. Really, again, to repeat, I think it's a twofold thing, is to provide the continuity of operations that has gotten us, I think, in trouble in the past, just by not having the correct number of people in the office, and then to also get caught up on a lot of things that we really need to get caught up on, and to be able to operate at a level, I think, where I would be comfortable with us being, and what I think is best for the city as well. And I think that this also ties in, there is obviously additional expenditures that are necessary to add a position, salary and equipment and benefits, but the way I look at this as well is providing a degree of comfort to the production of our financial statements, the timeliness of being able to get our reports out on time. That ties in directly to when we will eventually be going back to the bond market and go to the rating agencies to have our bond rating reviewed. If we're continuously reporting out our audits every year very late, they're going to ding us on the management capability, and very well could result in a reduction of a bond rating, which goes directly to our borrowing costs in the long run. So, I think that a little bit of money spent here, and it's not a little, but it's, in all things considered, I think that it would be money well spent to ensure that things operate a little more smoothly going forward.
Council Blanchett.
Several times many times over the last 18 months in the Finance Committee meetings on Friday mornings. We've asked about this or that, and many times we get the answer, it isn't ready yet because we don't have the staff. And especially in the summertime, if someone's on vacation, if somebody else is out sick at the same time. Last summer was hellish with COVID. Things went to hell in a handbasket. And I know we're down, it's either 2 or 3 people from where we were 4 or 5 years ago in that department.
There were 5 in the finance department at one point.
Exactly.
Functions within the finance department. We're down to 2
And
and a new trainee.
I'm amazed that that department, as short-staffed as what it's been, has done so well. What with everything that's been going on. One thing that you haven't mentioned that is coming up very shortly is our solar credits that the city is purchasing. That's coming online 4 months, 5 months?
Spring.
And allocating those credits to the proper account every month is gonna take 2 or 3 days of time to do that. And if we don't hire another person, rather than falling further and further behind, I think we're gonna fall over the cliff. And all of a sudden, things just won't get done. So I'm very much in favor of this. I think it's been a long time coming. I know that in the past, to try to alleviate it, we've hired agencies, temps, whatever, and it hasn't really worked. And the ones that have worked didn't work very well. So I think it's time to get the finance office back on track and get this done.
So, being part of the Finance Committee for the last several years, I have obviously a little bit more insight in terms of the history and the staffing and all of that. What I'm not sure is the case is, does the community have enough information to understand what's being requested in terms of what you just discussed, and understanding what the needs are? And I think that's an important factor in all of this in terms of, because what will happen is this just assumption of, oh, we're hiring more people. We're just going to support more costs. Why are you doing that? And I think it's important to make sure that information is provided to the community so they understand it. They still may not agree with it, but they would have the understanding in a little more detail than what you've presented tonight in terms of just what those duties are. What does it mean, the volume of work that's coming through, how many payables are processed, all of that kind of what goes into an audit. I just think that's important to share. And so my question to you is, if we were to postpone this decision for a month, would that set you back terribly in terms of the process of getting somebody, obviously getting somebody on board, but is that going to really decimate where you are right now?
If it wouldn't be possible, we would adapt. I mean, I think that we, as I mentioned, we are behind. The FY20 audit, which ended, June 30, 2020, we didn't get the audit until September of this year, partly because we were so far behind. And that's been the case in FY17. We got the audit in the following January, and then the next year it was April, the next year it was April, the next year it's September. We're not scheduled to have our auditors come and visit for the FY21 until January 10th. We've already pushed off their visit due to being behind. So, we have a new trainee in the accounts payable position, and, so that is taken care of for now, and we can do our best to get caught up, but it does put us behind.
Councilor Cap?
You said historically or in the past, there were 5 people in that department?
That's what I've been told.
And how many are currently there?
3 right now, 2 and the accounts payable person that we just hired.
And that includes yourself?
Yes.
So 3. And so if there's 2 people missing, why do we have to hire, are we creating a new position or just hiring somebody to fill one of the 2 open positions?
I don't think that it's really been open because it wasn't built into, I'm not aware of the circumstances of why they departed or exactly when, but the position's apparently left with them.
As you stated, so Tammy Moe, as deputy city manager, played a significant role in finance, yet Jen was the finance director. Stacy was the AP person, and then Kelly Herrick had some responsibilities as far in the finance office as well. So Sue McLean is our new tax collector. So she has some, but she hasn't been able to perform any duties in finance because she's still getting caught up on her tax position because the tax position was vacant for quite an extended period of time. So she hasn't been able to participate and fill a role. And realistically, with the amount of work that she has and her other duties, supervising the tax clerks, that position really isn't in a place where she's going to be able to provide the type of support that they need in an additional person. So those were the positions that existed within the finance office. And again, once Tammy left, then it fell entirely on Jen and Stacy. And Kelly had a very limited role, but she was absent quite a bit, so it just piled up, and it's just gotten to a point where now that Josh came on and Jen is still there, they've started to make some progress, but then Stacy left, and it kind of retarded all of the progress that they had made because Jen had to drop everything she's doing to do the AP stuff for the last, has it been 3 months?
Since the beginning of September.
Which put her work further behind, and there's plenty of work. There's plenty of work. There's no question about that. And the thing that's so critical about the finance is the finance department is really the heart of the city, of all of the city government, because everything we do, everything all the department heads do to manage their budgets and to control their spending and all that, all goes back to the finance department. And if we can't get accurate information out of the finance department, up-to-date information about where our budget is, what we've spent, what we still have to spend, then department heads can't manage their budgets properly. We can't plan for capital improvement things like, many of you have discussed in many of these meetings about road projects and walking trails and all of these other things that we want to do as a city going forward. Without stability and literally on-demand information out of the finance department, we can't do any of that. Everything's retarded by the inability to get accurate data out of the finance department so everybody else can better manage, more efficiently manage their budgets and plan for future development and expansion in our city. And so Councilor Blanchett's point, you're absolutely right. That addition of the approximately $200,000 savings from the solar credits means nothing unless we have somebody who can literally scrutinize those bills and make sure that the credits are appointed properly and that we get what we've invested in that plan. So for those reasons and many more, I think that Josh has done an outstanding job in the finance department, trying himself. Also need to remember he's new and he spent a fair amount of time trying to learn. He spent a fair amount of time trying to come up with creative ways to streamline and to make things more efficient, which you've seen tonight with the, with the paperless warrant. So through those efforts, I think, and by getting proper staffing beneath him, I think that in short order, we'll be able to have a finance department that's firing on all cylinders and can get the city to a position where our audits will be done accurately, on time, our year-end information can be processed quickly and efficiently so that department heads know what funding they have available, where they've, what funding they've expended. We can get our bills paid on time so we don't end up with additional charges for not paying things on time. So it's just one great big circle.
Councilor Kaplan.
So you're looking at possibly paying this person $43,000 a year to start? But you also want them to have a degree in accounting.
We want, I realize the difficulty it might pose, but sometimes you can find somebody with comparable experience that could fit the bill.
Councilors.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve council order number 112106 to permit the creation of a new position within the finance department with funds to be determined by the city manager.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Councilor Lyons.
So, I've kind of made a promise to my constituents that to try to keep the city government from growing and growing and growing and growing, which I guess I understand that's probably not gonna happen, no matter what I say. So, are there any departments that have too many people, or we just gotta keep hiring and hiring and hiring? We can't cut something somewhere to hire something somewhere else?
Well, we have made some concessions. We consolidated our fire and life safety inspector into code, so we didn't replace our code enforcement officer when he retired. I'm filling two roles in the city, in the police chief and the city manager.
So,
Those are the most recent changes that we've made, but we certainly try to, where we can, consolidate and not grow, but sometimes it's just the amount of work that needs to get done just can't get done by the number of staffing that we have. And
Is the city really growing at that rate that we can't keep up, we just keep hiring more people? Or more demand for services or something, or?
well, in the financial world, there's certainly growth in the city and demand on that particular department. But as we've stated earlier, when we lose people in the city who possess certain roles and possess certain abilities, and we don't replace them, then at some point, we're stuck with the need to replace individuals. So when you have a deputy city manager who's doing a dual role in the finance department and has 20-plus years of financial experience leave, and that person's never replaced, then that creates this pretty significant void that at some point needs to be addressed. And we addressed it with the finance director, and now we need to staff it appropriately so that they can handle the workload without getting further and further behind.
Councilor Miller.
I agree with you, Gene. I don't want the city to grow exponentially. But when the department had 5 people and now it has 2 people basically running in it, I think something's got to give there. They need help. And that to re-emphasize for the 3rd time, that solar project is going to be huge. And if it's screwed up, the city's going to lose a lot of money.
So, it's hard to appreciate the solar project, Gene, unless you've been involved with it, the amount of work that went into it and the amount of work that will go into it monthly. it's a ton of work to make sure that everything gets credited correctly. There are a lot of i's to be dotted, t's to be crossed, to meet the legal end of it on a monthly basis. And that's going to be a lot of work.
I also want to point out that I think there's somewhat of a recurring theme, a myth, a belief that people have that city government in Ellsworth is just growing and growing and growing, when the reality, look back, I would ask all citizens, go to the mill rate. Look at the mill rate, what it's been over the last 5 years, and you'll see that the mill rate has been almost unchanged. And the increase that happened this year was due not because of costs, but because of valuation of property, which is a complex issue, but it is important. That is a factual part of reality for the city. Keeping a mill rate flat is very difficult. There are costs that go up every single year. And over the last several years, there have been a lot of different cuts that have been made in expenses to the city. So I just think it's important when we're having this discussion. This is why I think it's helpful for the community to understand structure and why we need it in as much detail as possible, so that there's a better understanding and not just this belief that, well, costs are going up, we're just adding lots of positions, because that's not the case. We've intentionally, over the last several years, consolidated positions where we can. What is not a reality is we're not going to cut $1 million from city budget ever. That is entirely impossible when you think about the roads and all of our needs. But if you look over the same period of time, just look back over the last 3 years, talk to city employees, the amount of infrastructure that we hadn't addressed, that we have now addressed, the purchases that we've put into place, and done it in a responsible manner that didn't drive up the mill rate. We've been able to do that. And so these positions that we're talking about is kind of getting back to some equilibrium where people have left. We didn't fill those positions, and now there's a justifiable need, but it's still less than what it was before. So I just want to encourage people to look at that in more detail to understand it. Councilor Kaplan.
Has anybody looked at outsourcing? Like, several companies, they'll outsource their payroll because it's actually more cost-effective for them to outsource it than to do it locally, especially when you're looking at city government, where you're looking at the annual increases and the health insurance, the life, all of the benefits listed here. Currently, you've got 28,000 listed in benefits for a position that you're willing to pay $43,000 a year for. So have you looked at possibly outsourcing where you could get someone just for payroll? For example, there's payroll software organizations that will take on your payroll or your accounts payable.
Yeah, I can address it. So payroll isn't done in finance. Currently, it's done through our HR department. That's one of the considerations, is to relocate it to finance out of HR, because as the city, the HR responsibilities grow on that individual, it becomes more and more difficult for them to take the 20 or so hours a week dedicated to payroll. So.
But it says here their essential duties would be processing of weekly payroll, preparation of payroll tax withholdings, quarterly tax payments, W-2s and 1095s.
Yeah, no, but so that's what I'm saying. Right now, it's not done there, but that's one of the considerations, is to move it to this position out of human resources, so that our human resources person isn't dedicating 20-plus hours a week to payroll. So that's one consideration with this position. We've also looked into outsourcing our payroll, and that's not something that we've taken off the table. It's not cheap for a payroll of this size with as many different departments. We have some issues with scheduling. We're still struggling within the city to electronically do our payroll from individual departments. And so that we need to nail that process down in order to be able to outsource our payroll, because whoever takes on our payroll, they're just gonna pay whatever numbers we provide them. So we have to be able to make sure that the data that's coming out of the city is accurate. We also have a problem with outsourced payroll because the way our payroll is broken down, particularly in departments like police and fire, you have multiple different pay rates for one single employee. So it makes it really complicated when you have one employee, say in the police department, that their payroll goes in and they may have 4 different pay rates on that pay rate, because they have an overtime rate for dispatching, they have an overtime rate for work and patrol, they did a detail, so they get a detail pay, and then they get their straight pay. So it's a complicated process that's not as simple as just picking a company and going with them. But we are exploring it, and we are taking a look at that as a potential option to reduce the strain on staff.
And you said that HR is doing the scheduling?
Payroll.
All right, you said that you needed somebody in HR for the scheduling. I would think that the department heads would be doing all the scheduling.
So I just want to remind, we have a motion and a second on the motion, so the discussion that we're having should pertain to that motion. Councilor O'Halloran.
I have a question about the benefit cost to this employee. And perhaps you could tell me, this $1461.26, is that what the city pays for single subscriber?
Yes, that's the city's portion, monthly portion for health insurance, but that's what the city would pay,
Single subscriber?
yes. No, I'm sorry, I did family coverage.
Family coverage?
Every number that you see here is the highest number that it could be. We went with the highest retirement match, the highest everything, so it should not exceed these numbers in front of you on the benefits.
So that's the city's portion,
Correct.
okay? So what is the employee's portion?
The
If
total
this
for
is-
the month is $1,525, so it's about $100. $110.
So in other words, this number of $17,000 may be less if there's not family coverage.
Absolutely. Yes, single coverage would be about $650 a month on the city. So I went with the highest numbers here because you can't go up. You can only go down.
Right.
So yeah, the single coverage would be about $650 a month. The retirement may not even be existent. Maybe they don't want retirement, so that would be an expense that we don't have to spend. We have
And the
several not
motion-
enrolled.
The motion before us gives the city manager latitude here, correct?
Where to fund it out of.
How to fund it.
But can't go beyond the total dollar amount, so but the manager.
But we could move this around, in other words. If you found the right candidate, you could pay them more if you wished, correct? Or is that not the motion?
No, the motion is for the, what was the amount I mentioned?
About,
No, there was no amount, it's to be determined by the city manager, but there's your grand total, 77.6.
To be determined by the city manager means that, do I understand this right, that he has some latitude to adjust that if he has to, correct? If you see a good candidate and you need to pay them more, is that fair?
Yes, the manager
Great.
can make that, and what the manager's also tasked with the motion is to identify where those funds are coming out of. And so if there's a need to go beyond, the manager will have to come back and inform the city council of how that position's been funded.
Thank you for clarifying.
Other discussion? All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? Motion passes. I would ask, though, to put this back on the agenda, for you to just present a little more detail about your departments, what that looks like, the workflow, controls, required types of controls in terms of positions and where you can't be in charge of writing and approving checks and, all those aspects so that the community has a little bit more understanding about this need. I still think that's important.
Okay. Thank you.
The motion, executive session. Item 17, executive session to discuss personnel matters in accordance with MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Section 405, Paragraph 6A. And then we will be coming out of executive session to take action on the executive session to discuss personnel matters. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? We are going into executive session. We are back on, good. All right, Madam Clerk, we had a motion to come out of executive session by Councilor Blanchett, and it was seconded by Councilor Miller. And we are now out of executive session. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Tony Renee Dyer as the interim city clerk.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
I might thank you later.
You might not thank us.
Very awkward discussions.
But it come, the caveat, no more of those damn drinks in the morning.
Oh, no.
No caffeine in those drinks. What do you call them, extra jolts? Lits. Yeah.
Item 18, adjournment. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? We are adjourned.